Separation from main transport complete. Group aid delivered to Palestine region. Entry in 3, 2, 1. Beginning arrow assist. Phase begun. Activating retro-propulsion. Drop pod integrity nominal. Omni situational exploration suit nominal. Pioneer. Acceptable.
This is Satisfactory. It's a first-person shooter and platformer. Also, you can build factories in it. Jokes aside, if you've clicked on this video, chances are you already know what kind of game this is. It's the second best factory building game ever made, depending on who you ask. But why the hell is there an assault rifle in a game about building factories? Satisfactory does something a little different. It gives you a side quest, the biggest side quest ever. And no, it isn't just to build more factories, although that sometimes does form part of it. At any point in a playthrough, if you're feeling a little burnt out on building your 40-second screw assembler, you can simply leave. See, the benefit of not having a procedurally generated world is that the devs could put time and effort into handcrafting a world that's actually fun to explore. Not to say that procedural worlds can't accidentally create beautiful vistas and landscapes, but in general, having someone design a set piece is going to result in something more interesting and nicer to look at. And that makes the world of Satisfactory much more inviting and engaging. Also a perfect world for there to be goodies scattered around for us to find. Everywhere you look, there are platforming sections for you to take advantage of to get around. And whole biomes dedicated to exploration, without it being explicitly stated. The map is also just plain enormous. I loaded up an old save game to get some footage and found myself exploring parts of the map I've never seen before. And not to mention the absolutely jaw-dropping megaflora and terrain. Crater lakes, enormous canyons, waterfalls the size of mountains, mushrooms that touch the sky. If I told you this game was about building factories, I don't think you'd believe me. These are pretty to find, but they also act as their own puzzles when it comes to collectibles and transporting resources, fluids in particular. The sheer verticality is a real challenge. Compare this to something like Factorio, where the biggest interaction you really have with the terrain is blowing up some trees and alien nests to make space for a rail line. Side note, I always thought all the non-factory building elements of Satisfactory were a direct result of it being made in Unreal. I can imagine the devs fiddling around with the engine and adding all kinds of cool stuff, just because they had such a powerful tool at their disposal. Hell, it would have been a shame not to make use of all the high-fidelity explosion effects. The enemies in Satisfactory are nicely balanced too. In the starting areas, they are barely a hassle and can be taken out with the little Xeno Zapper. But they quickly get quite scary as you progress into the other areas. The giant spiders in particular give me the heebie-jeebies. I won't say the overall enemy design is genius or anything, they all are quite simple at the end of the day, but they are balanced just right to necessitate some of the equipment you can unlock. Their placement is logical. The low-level enemies guarding iron and copper deposits don't do much to stop your industrial pillaging of the landscape. But if you want to access some of the richest deposits on the map and some of the collectibles, well, then you're going to have to deal with the almighty rustler of jimmies. The devs made a conscious decision to make the enemies not attack your base, which I hear is an irritation in other factory building games. This means they are strictly only something you have to deal with when you want to. The exploration and combat part of the gameplay loop is fantastic, and it interacts both independently and synergetically to the main experience. In other words, it's its own separate thing, but it also helps you build your factory. Through the MAM, you unlock so much. Newer players might miss out on these early on, or altogether. The Blade Runners are really one of the most useful early unlocks. With some hard drive rack scavenging and early quartz mining, you can get them before you even place a single assembler. These make exploration about 10 times more fun with how fast you can run, jump, and not fall while dying. But they also make getting around your factory a bit easier too. Caterium is another one that you can rush and gives you access to power poles that don't suck. And its later unlocks are for the big nerds who want more complex factories. Killing mobs also directly can benefit your factory by giving a massive early boost to biomass. And then in the form of alien protein, for those sweet awesome shop tickets. The mycelia research line is probably the least interesting. Sure, parachutes are useful early on for base jumping, but I really don't use the inhalers all that much. Get good, I guess. In my latest playthrough in the deep desert, I rushed the explorer early on, and it made exploring a lot more fun. But everything from the rebar gun to the nobelisks helped you out in the field. And how could I forget about the big four? Getting all of these feels incredibly rewarding. The slugs mean you can speed up natural choke points in your factory, like pumps or mines. And effectively means you can double the size of certain lines without having to build anything extra. I love this, because I'm a little lazy. The hard drives totally change how you build certain layouts with the different recipes. I love finding these because it's a total roll of the dice what you're gonna get. No factory game is complete without a little gambling. There's a legendary screw recipe that I hear is quite popular. Mercer spheres unlock the pocket dimension mechanics, which are so useful, especially in the late game. They essentially function like Factorio's drones with how they resupply you. Fun fact, the Mercer sphere is actually named after the best DM in the world. Finally, the summer sloops literally create materials out of thin air in the late game, which is basically the best reward and bonus for any factory. I realize the Factorio comparisons are a bit tired at this point, but they really serve as a useful tool in comparison. For a moment, compare Satisfactory's exploration and enemies to Factorio's. In that game, you only really need to explore to find more resource nodes. There essentially is no reward for doing it, outside of when you need some more oil. The enemies also act as blockers, but your main interaction with them doesn't really net you anything, besides a base that isn't all fucked up. I did a great vid on that about how the bugs in Factorio are more of a stick than a carrot, if you want to hear more. The movement system in Satisfactory really forms an important part of all the non-factory building elements too. Again, the devs made a conscious design decision to give the players a lot of freedom when it comes to just zooting around. I mean, you can b-hop for Christ's sake. Show me like one other management game where you can do that. They didn't want to gate the player's ability to explore by making movement and movement speed an issue. So they gave us tons of tools and mechanics to exploit. The Blade Runners are probably the most notable because they turned the game into a Half-Life 2 speedrun. But then there are also things like the jump pads and jellies. The Explorer, the vacuum tubes, the vacuum tube cannons. I hear those are pretty famous. There is also no limit to where and how you can build. So a mountain is only as tall as many ramps as you need to get up it. Shout out to the ladder. The jetpack isn't unlocked via the MAM, but I have to mention it because of how much it helps in getting around. This really unlocks exploration in the harder to get to areas. See, a simple movement speed cap could ruin all of this, and add some realism and grounding to a factory building game. But the devs said fuck that. Break the game more if it means you can get from A to B quicker. The game is about building factories, getting cool bonuses from exploration. It's not about getting stuck somewhere because you can't get up a cliff, or because it takes too long to find some more copper. I must admit though, there was a missed opportunity in the vehicles of the game. Their capacity for exploration is more of an afterthought, as they primarily are used for moving resources around. Most of the land vehicles are fun, but they're only about as fast as a bunny hopper. And the verticality and roughness of the game's terrain means they often just get stuck, or fall off. I hear they even get skipped quite often. I think most just hold out for the train. If we take a deeper look at the combat, we can see that there really isn't all that much going on. But you do have an unreal level of mobility when it comes to dealing with threats. Looking at the weapons, the Xenozapper is fine as a starter weapon, and it does just enough damage so that it becomes pretty useless against anything but the tier 1 enemies. The Xenobasher is the direct upgrade and feels much better to use, and has greater reach, making it good for small enemies. It stays in vogue until you start dealing with things that hurt a bit more, aka the late game enemies. Also, you can't see the end of it in first person, but the Xenobasher is just the Xenozapper, but longer. The rebar gun is probably my least favorite because of its tedious reload. I do love the design though, because it seems like a weapon that's been MacGyvered out of whatever the Pioneer can find. Rebar isn't exactly a standard round of ammunition. The Nobelisk is an obstacle clearer, but also fun to carpet bomb aliens with. And finally, we have the assault rifle. It's honestly just mwah. It's so powerful that it makes short work of most enemies. The design is fantastic too. It's one up from the rebar gun because it fires actual bullets, but it still has plenty of elements that remind you that this is a homemade weapon. Do you notice anything about all these weapons? There actually aren't that many of them. There's literally a melee weapon and its upgrade, a ranged weapon and its upgrade, and effectively a grenade. In short, the weapons are simple, but still rewarding to unlock and use. And most importantly, they synergize so well with unlocking exploration and factory expansion. The more you invest in unlocking them, the easier it will be for you to unlock more and to clear resource nodes, which in turn provides the resources you need for your factory. You are only really rewarded for interacting with this system. Satisfactory has really nailed exploration and combat, and the separate yet connected progression system that it brings to the overall experience. You don't really have to interact with it all that much if you don't want to, because only a few things later on are gated by it. But it can provide so many useful rewards for both building better factories and exploring the further reaches of this strange planet. It's close to what I would consider a perfect addition to an otherwise great experience. So, there is your answer. That's why you can build factories in this first-person shooter. Thanks for watching.